Hello, my name is Mike Gardner. Thanks for letting me say a few words today. I really wish I could be there with you today, Jean. You have always been a good friend. I feel for you and hope you can find comfort in the love Brian's family and friends had for him and for you. I was there when Brian and you met and through your courtship that followed. I was proud when Brian chose me to be his best man at your wedding. Brian loved you very much. To Brian's sisters, Susan and Denise, I think over the past couple of weeks in Kaohsiung, you have come to understand why Brian loved Taiwan so much and why the Taiwan community loved Brian. I look forward to seeing both of you in Maryland. And to all of the friends that have come today to celebrate the life of Brian Kennedy, while we all share the grief over our collective loss, I know we count ourselves fortunate to have known this very unique man and to have called him a friend. Intelligent, humorous, kind, caring, compassionate, stubborn. That was Brian. An undeniable presence in any room, an unforgettable man. Those of you who know me are aware how much Brian meant to me. He was the closest friendship I made during my time in Taiwan. He was a true soulmate in spirit. I arrived in Taiwan for the first time in late fall of 1990. I had taken a year off university to join a couple of friends on what I was sure would be a once-in-a-lifetime adventure. Shortly after Christmas, I moved into a famous Taipei landmark, the International House of Taipei. It was there that I met Brian Andrew Kennedy. This is the first photo I have of Brian, sitting in the common lounge of International House. I don't remember the names of the other three gentlemen, but there is Brian, with me being the first on the left. Isn't that the way in Taiwan, though? So many people come in and out of your life, but there are only a few of them that have a true impact on you. During my time in Taiwan, for me, he was the one that had the most impact. He was my best friend and my mentor. My mentor of all things good and bad. I remember thinking, how cool was this guy? His accent, his presence, his cadence and delivery, everything about him seemed cool to me. I loved how he would simultaneously say something that was both smart and witty, then punctuate it by laughing at his own joke. Bah! And he was the first foreign guy that I ever met that could actually speak Chinese. How cool was that? And although I couldn't speak any Chinese at the time, I used to be amazed at how he would be yammering in Mandarin and then finish off his sentences with that same laughter. 就是这样. Bah! I stayed in Taiwan for another 6 months before returning to Canada. Without question, that was the most exciting, most fun, most completely spontaneous and free period of my life. I crammed in so many good times and memories, and most of those included Brian. Brian introduced me to the necessary reinvigoration of the spirit that you can only get by escaping Taipei on regular intervals. He introduced me to early morning train trips and overnight stays at Fulong Beach. He introduced me to the freedom of road trips, him on his styling Vespa, of course. Those were fantastic rides. No real plan in mind, just a destination and an understanding that the itinerary would take care of itself. Not surprisingly, that led to many pit stops and adventures on the way to the final destination. Brian also introduced me to the unique coolness of hitchhiking in Taiwan. We had many trips up and down the Suao, Hualien, Taidong Highway, always taking rides in the back of one of the finer blue utility vehicles you find in Taiwan. It was the preferred mode of travel as it allowed us to have beers and get a suntan while enjoying a magnificent ocean view. After those 6 months, I returned to Canada for my final year of university. We kept in touch through the mail. Brian was a fantastic letter writer. I know he really enjoyed putting pen to paper. It gave him a chance to share his intelligence and wit. When I returned to Taiwan a year later, we resumed our road trips. The more memorable ones were after he had moved down to join me in Kaohsiung. Here's a picture of three morons getting ready to tackle the Southern Cross Island Highway to Taidong, totally oblivious that a typhoon was set to make landfall on the east coast the very next morning. It was a great ride with many memorable moments. Probably wasn't the brightest idea, however, to jump off our motorcycles at around 4 o'clock in the afternoon and jump in the waterfall. After all, the sun was going down in about an hour, and we still had quite a way to climb to get to the 3,000-meter tunnel through the top of the Cross Island Highway. It was rather cold, particularly for three individuals who hadn't packed anything but shorts and muscle shirts. There were, of course, many other trips. Taking a ferry to Penghu to celebrate Brian's 30th birthday was certainly one of the highlights. We had a great trip on the ferry over to Penghu. The 3-hour ride included taking photos on deck, sharing conversation and laughs, proceeding to the karaoke lounge where Brian belted out a few of his Chinese favorites. The ride home was also a memorable one, with 3 hours, or maybe about 4 hours, in typhoon force winds. It was a very unpleasant ride back to Kaohsiung. In between, we of course had a fantastic night out, eating seafood and hanging with the locals. And the following morning got up and had a good ride around the islands. What fantastic memories. Brian will be remembered as a great conversationalist. I'm sure he would have enjoyed that description of himself. He probably should have put it on a business card. Brian Kennedy, conversationalist. He loved a good chat and a good debate. Politics was, of course, his favorite subject matter. That said, he wasn't limited to just politics. He was up for a good debate on any subject and would express his opinion over the most mundane issues. For example, here he is debating the fastest, but also the most scenic road to get to Taidong. And Brian, being an expert in diverse fields, could hold his own in any argument. I have here an action shot of him debating appropriate seafaring tactics during our trip to the Philippines. Brian will also be remembered for his style. Now, I use that word style with some reservation. He liked his fedoras, his Ray-Bans, his skinny ties, his suspenders, his sports coats with elbow patches, his mullet look, his short hair look, his heavy beer look, and of course his Fu Manchu look. It may never have passed in the world of fashion, but he definitely had his own style, and he always managed to pull it off. Speaking of style, many people remarked on how Brian reminded them of Nicolas Cage. Actually, Nicolas Cage reminded me of Brian. Now, Nicolas Cage is known to be a method actor, and I'm convinced he had been secretly spying on Brian so that he could copy his delivery. I think the scene serves as evidence of that. It also dovetails nicely with Brian's unique sense of style.
Wow.
Baby, I got a surprise for you.
Hey, my snakeskin jacket! Thanks, baby! Did I ever tell you that this here jacket represents a symbol of my individuality and my belief in personal freedom?
About 50,000 times. I got us a room at the Cape Fear, and guess what? Power Man's playing at the Hurricane.
Stabbing and steer.
An uncanny resemblance indeed. Brian will also be remembered for his great appreciation of music. I used to go listen to him as guest DJ at his favorite pub in Taipei. deviate, and later enjoyed having him broaden my narrow musical knowledge as my own personal DJ in an apartment we shared in Kaohsiung. I regret never having had the opportunity to hear him spin his music at DC Stage, and regret even more not having the opportunity to see him play his blues harp and share the stage with friends and musicians at the pub he loved most. The last time I saw Brian was when he came through Ottawa in 2007. He was driving east after visiting his mom in Colorado and wanted to drive around Lake Superior, traveling new roads and appreciating some new scenes. That was the Kennedy way. He was planning to stay for 3 days before heading down to visit friends in his childhood home of Fort Washington, Maryland. Of course, Brian wasn't entirely tied to his original plan. And because we were having so much fun, the 3 days stretched into 8 days. Fluid decision-making and planning, that was a Brian trademark as well. Here is the last photo I have of Brian. Like I said previously, to me, everything about Brian was cool. Even his Chinese name, Bo Rei, sounded cool to me. When my first son was born, that was the name I chose for him. I didn't even consider another name. I'm so happy to have this photo. I call it Bo Rei and Bo Rei. As Brian pulled out of my driveway after his extended visit, I didn't realize it would be my last time seeing him. Over the years, we always maintained contact. Sporadic telephone calls, yes. But I could always count on a phone call on my birthday, and we always got in touch at least once around Christmas time. December 24th, Monday morning my time, I checked my email, and there it was, like I knew there would be. A message from Jean let me know that Brian had left us. That was tough. I had my office Christmas party that morning and had to bring my kids in to see Santa and join in the festivities. It goes without saying that I wasn't feeling terribly festive. Now I know I won't be getting my Christmas phone call this year, but I do believe Brian reached out to me one final time that day in his own unique and humorous fashion. When I arrived at my office, I found a Christmas present on my chair. Now, we don't give presents at work, but my coworker said she wanted to give me a small, simple joke gift. Well, I unwrapped the present, and this is what was inside. A beginner's guide to harmonica. I could almost hear Brian laughing, saying, "Here you go, Gardner. Here's something to promote your musical aspirations." Blah! Brian lived his life in his own way, on his own terms, and like everyone at the service today, I'm lucky to have called him a friend, to have shared the conversations and laughs with this beautiful man. I have lost a best friend. Kaohsiung has lost an institution, and the world is a lot less fun without Brian Kennedy in it. Thank you.